This is Barry from Barry's Marine in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. Today we'll be changing the impeller in this vintage Mercruiser outdrive. This is a 1973 original Mercruiser, original 2.5 liter, 120 horse motor. All the Mercruisers are basically the same from early 70s up until about 1991 and a half. This is early one. Has this ring on top that dates it to I believe a 1 model. Over here we have Alpha 1 Gen 2. These were introduced in around 1991 and a half. They have several minor differences, including different water pump housing, but this is the big main giveaway. 7-hamming studs with nuts on. These use 4 bolts with nuts to attach it. This is actually a SEI aftermarket outdrive. Good outdrives, about 1/3 the cost of Mercruiser. They're made in Florida. I'm a dealer for them. I had good luck with them. This guy also needs a new impeller. We'll do that in a separate video. So let's get started on this one. First we'll be removing the 4 major 5/8 nuts, 1 on either side here, 2 underneath down here. Should be a trim tab here which is missing. Trim tab, sacrificial anode. Underneath there is a Allen head that has to come out, and there's a 5/8 nut on the leading edge up here as well. So all that's got to come off before we can drop it. I put it in forward gear first. Makes reassembly easier. So we'll get started on that. Okay, we're changing the impeller in this older Mercruiser, 120 horse. It's a 1973 with a 120 horse Mercruiser 2.5 liter. We've drained the gear lube, as you can see, got most of it out. I've replaced the bottom drain screw down here, just so we don't drip all over the place. And the tools required to do this are pretty simple. You need a 5/8 inch socket, a 5/8 inch open end wrench, and an Allen head wrench. Normally there would be a trim tab or a sacrificial anode attached to this bolt right here. That's missing, so we don't have to deal with that. But if you look up underneath here, there's another Allen head screw that's got to come out. So that's got to come out. This bolt on both, nut on both sides, got to come off. And there's recessed 5/8 nut here, and then there's one on the leading edge back here. So let's get started on that. Okay, now we have all the fasteners off except one. I always leave one nut on until we get the lower unit separated, which you can see it's separated here. If you take them all off, there is a good chance the lower unit can fall off and land on your foot, which is not much fun. So now I'm going to remove the last nut, remove the lower unit from the upper. One other thing I did prior to removing everything is put the lower unit in forward. It's not required, but makes reassembly much easier if it's in gear when you just take it apart, and in gear when you put it back together. So we'll move to the fixture and actual removal of the water pump housing and the impeller next. Okay, now we have the lower unit off, and in my test fixture, this is nothing more than a 2x8 cut to fit inside a vise and sandwiched between 2 pieces of 3/8 plywood. I've been using this for 15 years. Just about every lower unit I've ever worked on fits in this just fine. I usually tilt it up at a slight angle so this thing doesn't slide out. Right here's the water pump housing. There's 4 screws that hold the housing to the lower housing, and the impeller's inside here. So we've got to remove this exhaust donut, this O-ring here, and these 4 screws. One is 3/8, 2 are 7/16, and one is a 1/2 inch. So we'll do that next. Also notice the copper water pipe tube came out of the upper unit. It's not supposed to do that. It's stuck in the lower, so we're going to have to remove that and reinsert it into the upper before we reassemble. Okay, here is the old impeller compared to the new impeller. You can see quite a bit of difference there. This one is not going to work. A small 1/4 inch socket set like this makes the task of removing the water pump housing much easier. Here's the water pump housing. Appears to be in good shape. Cup appears to be in good shape. Wear plate looks good. Should be able to reuse these gaskets. Sometimes these fall apart.
and you have to replace them as well, in which case you gotta buy a kit instead of just the impeller. Replacement impeller, about 20 bucks, list price. So now we're gonna reinstall the new impeller. This is the keyway here. Usually I put a little grease on that, hold it in place as we drop the new impeller over the shaft, and then we'll have to put the housing on after that. Okay, I got all the little pieces of the vanes and rubber out of the lower unit housing underneath the water pump housing. That took me a little longer than I figured. And now I have the water pump housing ready to go into the impeller. The impeller's on. You gotta make sure the slot in the impeller goes into the keyway when you spin the prop. If the propeller's spinning at the same time, chances are you got it right. And now what I'm going to do is apply downward pressure on this water pump housing while spinning the prop shaft, drive shaft clockwise. And this will allow the blades to get into the cup. This is probably the easiest way I found of doing this. It'll work. I can't shoot the video and do it at the same time, so we'll pick up later. Okay, we have the impeller in, the water pump housing back on, the exhaust unit on, the O-ring on. Got the water tube out, reinserted into the upper, so that's ready to go. Correction to earlier, this is a 5/16 screw, not a 3/8. And before I put the water pump housing over the impeller, I coated all the leading edges of the impeller with soapy water. That makes it, facilitates getting that water pump housing on and over the impeller. The other thing you want to do, make sure the lower unit's in forward, so basically when you spin the prop shaft or the drive shaft clockwise, the prop shaft and prop should also spin clockwise. So you want to make sure you're in gear, in forward gear, before you do the reassembly. Okay, as you can see, the lower unit's been reattached to the upper. When you're doing this, it's much easier if you got two people, someone to help you. I did it by myself today, went in the first time. When you're putting the lower unit on, you gotta make sure the water tube aligns properly with the water tube guide, the white plastic thing on top of the water pump housing, and you gotta get the shift rod, upper shift rod, to slide over the lower shift rod correctly. And then when you put together, you want to leave about a 1/4 inch gap here so that you can get these 5/8 nuts on. Otherwise, if you put it up all the way, you can't get them on. And then what I generally do is snug those nuts up on both sides. This one here, and of course this one here. And then I shift the lower unit manually, statically, to make sure I got neutral, forward, and reverse. And I've done that already, so everything's good. I can put the rest of the fasteners on, fill it up with gear lube, and test it. So there we go. Okay, as you can see, the lower unit's all together, ready to be tested. Got the muffs on it. I filled it full of gear lube. When you fill these with gear lube, always fill from the bottom drain screw. Make sure the vent screw's out, pump it, gear lube in until you get gear lube coming out of the top, put the vent screw in, quickly remove your pumping apparatus, and put the drain screw in. And should be ready to go. I use a industrial type or commercial grade gear lube pump, works really well. You'll probably be using a smaller pump, they work okay, just takes a little longer, fits into a quart bottle. Most Mercruisers take roughly 30 to 33 ounces of gear lube. If you have a newer one with a reservoir in the engine compartment, you will also need to top that off, otherwise you'll get a low gear lube alarm when you fire it up. So we're ready to start this guy up and make sure she's pumping water. Okay, we got this motor running on muffs. You can see a good flow of water coming out of the exhaust relief holes here. Water coming out of the prop, that means it's all good. We'll let this run for a few minutes just to make sure it doesn't overheat, but should be ready to go.